The evening lights of Istanbul painted the city in soft shades of gold and silver. Along the Bosphorus, the calm wind carried the scent of the sea, while people filled the cafes, laughing and sharing stories under the glowing lanterns. It was one of those peaceful nights that seemed almost unreal, the kind that made people believe beautiful moments could last forever. Inside a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the water, Baris Arduc sat near the balcony, enjoying a cup of coffee after a long day of filming. The city below moved endlessly, but for a rare moment, he allowed himself to slow down and simply watch the world breathe around him. Not far away, Elçin Sangu arrived with a warm smile that instantly brightened the atmosphere. She greeted the restaurant staff kindly before stepping toward the balcony. The moment Baris looked up and saw her, his expression softened in a way that cameras could never fully capture. Fans often noticed that look. It was calm, genuine, full of quiet admiration. And every single time it happened, people around the world began dreaming all over again. "Elcin," Baris said with a smile as he stood up politely. "You came early," she replied playfully while taking her seat across from him. "I wanted to enjoy the view before the city became too loud." Elcin glanced toward the Bosphorus and nodded softly. "It already feels like a movie scene."
Barış laf et quietly.
Everything in Istanbul feels like a movie scene at night. For a few moments, they simply enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere.
No cameras. No interviews.
No busy schedules pulling them in different directions. Just two old friends sharing a quiet evening in the middle of a city that never stopped moving. The restaurant owner approached their table with tea and desserts prepared specially for them. "Thank you," Elcin said warmly. "It's always an honor to welcome you both," the owner replied with a respectful smile before leaving them alone again. As the night continued, their conversation flowed naturally. They talked about work, travel plans, favorite books, and the strange feeling of growing older, while the world around them seemed to move faster every year. "Do you ever miss the simpler days?" Elcin suddenly asked. Baris leaned back thoughtfully. "Sometimes, especially when life becomes too busy to notice small moments." Elcin smiled gently. "You still notice them. How do you know?" "Because you always stop to watch sunsets." Baris looked surprised for a second before laughing softly. "You remember that? You used to disappear during filming breaks just to watch the sky. And you used to make fun of me for it." "I still do," she joked. Their laughter blended with the distant sound of music drifting across the water. Nearby guests occasionally glanced toward them, recognizing the famous duo but respectfully allowing them privacy. What nobody could ignore, however, was the energy between them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was simply comforting, the kind of connection people rarely found in modern life. At another table near the balcony, a young couple quietly whispered to each other. "They still look perfect together," the girl said. Her boyfriend smiled. "I think the whole world believes that." And honestly, it was true. For years, fans had watched Baris and Elcin share unforgettable moments both on screen and off-screen. Their natural chemistry, mutual respect, and warm friendship created something audiences could never forget. Even the smallest interaction between them became a topic of excitement online. A smile, a glance, a simple conversation. To fans, those moments felt magical. Back at the table, Elcin noticed Baris staring toward the sea again. "You're thinking deeply about something," she said. "Maybe. Should I be worried?" "No," he replied calmly. "I was just wondering how quickly time passes." Elcin became quiet for a moment. "That scares me too sometimes," she admitted. Baris looked at her carefully.
"Why?"
"Because beautiful moments never stay long enough." The wind gently moved strands of her hair as she looked out toward the glowing bridge in the distance. For a second, the city noise faded completely.
Barış Yaçet her silentli.
And there it was again. That look.
Soft.
Quiet. Full of emotion. The same look fans had spent years talking about. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt real. Elcin noticed him staring and raised an eyebrow with a playful smile. "What?" "Nothing." "That's not true." "I was just thinking." "Dangerous habit."
Barış laf et.
Maybe. She shook her head with amusement before taking a sip of tea. You still haven't changed. Neither have you. Good, she replied softly. You always say that even when you're freezing. Before she could respond, Baris removed his jacket and gently placed it over her shoulders. Elcin blinked in surprise. You still do this, she said quietly. You still forget to bring a proper coat. A small smile appeared on her face as she held the jacket closer against the cold breeze. Some gestures never lose their meaning. Even simple kindness can feel unforgettable when it comes from someone important. The silence between them returned again, but this time it carried something deeper. Not awkwardness, not uncertainty, just comfort. The kind of silence shared only by people who truly understand each other. Far below the rooftop, the city remained alive with movement and noise, but up there, everything felt distant and calm. Elcin suddenly smiled to herself. What now? Baris asked. I was thinking about our first meeting. Baris laughed immediately. I did not ignore you. You absolutely ignored me. I was nervous. You looked very confident. That was acting, she admitted.
Barış similet karmli.
You were still unforgettable. For a brief second, Elcin looked away shyly, and Baris noticed. That look in his eyes returned again. Gentle, admiring, honest. The same look fans endlessly replayed in videos online. The same look that inspired thousands of comments, edits, and emotional conversations around the world. Sometimes people tried to explain why audiences connected so strongly with them. Maybe it was because they reminded people of old-fashioned romance, the kind built on respect, trust, and understanding rather than dramatic words. Or maybe it was simply because they seemed happiest around each other. The rooftop lights dimmed slightly as the restaurant prepared to close for the night. We should probably leave, Elcin said softly. Probably. But neither of them moved immediately. Instead, they stayed near the balcony, watching the final raindrops disappear into the dark waters below. Then Elcin suddenly asked, Do you ever read the comments fans write about us?
Barış similet knojin.
Sometimes. And some are funny. Most are emotional. That too. Elcin laughed quietly. People really believe we're living inside a love story. Baris looked toward her calmly. Maybe everyone wants to believe stories like that still exist. His voice carried such sincerity that Elcin became quiet again. For a second, neither of them looked away. The air between them felt heavy with unspoken emotion. Not dramatic. Not complicated. Just real. Then suddenly, the peaceful moment broke when Baris's phone vibrated loudly against the table. Elcin laughed immediately. Perfect timing. Baris looked disappointed while checking the screen. My manager. You should answer. He can wait 5 more minutes.
Barış.
He sighed dramatically before answering the call and walking a few steps away. Elcin watched him while smiling softly to herself. Even after all these years, there was something calming about his presence. Fame had changed many things around them, but somehow it had not changed the kindness in him. Emergency? Elcin asked.
No.
Just tomorrow's schedule. You work too much. So do you. That's different.
How?
I complain about it more professionally. Baris laughed again. As they finally prepared to leave, the restaurant staff thanked them warmly. Outside, the streets glistened under the city lights, while the cool night air wrapped around Istanbul like a quiet melody. A car waited nearby to take Elcin home. Before getting inside, she turned toward Baris. Tonight was nice. We should do this again sometime. Soon, he replied. Elcin smiled softly before stepping toward the car door. But before entering, she paused for a second.
Barış?
You still watch sunsets? Baris looked surprised by the question. Whenever I can.
Good.
Then she entered the car, slowly disappearing into the glowing streets of Istanbul. Baris stood there for a moment, watching the car fade into the distance. And once again, that expression appeared on his face. Quiet, thoughtful, full of emotion he never fully explained. The next morning, Photos from the rooftop restaurant would spread across social media everywhere. Fans would notice every detail. The smiles, the laughter, the jacket around Elcin's shoulders, and especially the way Baris looked at her while she spoke. Once again, millions of people would begin imagining their perfect love story all over again. Because some connections are simply impossible to forget.